back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey, man, this time I'm going to do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosnansky. Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everything's going well for you here on this Monday, the 24th day of the month of January for 2022. Hope you all had a great week, a very exciting weekend, which was, much more exciting than last weekend after what was a dud in the wild card round. I mean, you did have last weekend the excitement, the craziness that we're all still making fun of with the Dallas Cowboys, and the end of Bengals Raiders was interesting. But for the most part, the other games were all decided within the first half, and you were left waiting for divisional weekend, which is always thought of as the best weekend of the NFL season, and it lived up to the hype for sure. Every time you didn't think it could get better, each game topped itself. And I want to start with the AFC because the cherry on top of the weekend, of course, was the treat, the all-time instant classic that we got to bear witness last night in Kansas City between the Chiefs and the Bills. The Bills looking for revenge 364 days after having their hearts broken by this same Chiefs team in the AFC Championship game last year. And, you could tell early on that we were in for a shootout, that we were in for a fight between Allen and Mahomes, especially when, the Bills realized early you were not going to be able to win this game on that night with field goals. Going for it, 2 fourth downs on the first drive of a game, especially one of them in your own territory, is normally lunacy. You're questioning the head coach's sanity. But you look on the other side of that field, you see Patrick Mahomes, you see all of his weapons, you see a great play caller, great offensive designer, and Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, and you're like, we can't just settle for long field goals on a night like this in front of this crowd. And Allen, early on, you saw a lot of him running around, making plays up with his feet. But as the game was going on, you would realize just how special that arm talent is if you were new to the game or someone that didn't constantly follow the Buffalo Bills. And he did it all last night. He did every single thing you could ask for him. And that was on a night in which you got nothing out of his main threat, out of his number one guy in Stephon Diggs. One of the big things brought up all during this week leading into this game, hyped upon, was last year when the Chiefs are celebrating as AFC champions, Stephon Diggs remained on the field standing on about his own 15, 20-yard line, just staring out at that celebration, almost as motivation. And outside of a 2-point conversion late in this game, you would not have known that Stephon Diggs was part of this game. What really helped Allen last night is, A, the Bills' ability to move the ball on the ground, but B, like a career performance by Gabriel Davis, a guy that has been a good player, been a solid player for the Bills, but for the most part is a relatively unknown player to the casual football fan. And he goes out there and all night long is making plays down the field. Had a big 70-yard touchdown catch and go late in this game, just when it looked like the Chiefs were starting to pull away. Looked like it was going to be their night easily with a 2-score lead. Second play of the drive, he catches a long touchdown pass to bring them back within 1 score. And now the Chiefs could never just sit on a lead in this game, even when they got the early 14-7 lead, or led by 9 in the third quarter, because every single time they had to answer Josh Allen. They had to answer Gabriel Davis, answer an offense in the Bills that is every bit as good as they are. Outside of Diggs, they don't have the weapons that are, like I said, known to the common football fan, unless you're someone that is a diehard Buffalo Bills fan, B, follows the sport regularly, or C, you're a big time fantasy football player. If you're just the average Joe watching this game, all the guys on the Chiefs, you see them on TV all the time, but outside of Allen, you don't know who most of these guys are, and they're making big play after big play. And, what helped Gabriel is most of what he was doing last night was inside up the middle. And what probably helped with that was that Tyrann Mathieu was knocked out of this game early on with a head injury due to incidental contact by his own teammate. So they were able to take advantage of what had clearly become a weakness for the Kansas City Chiefs. Not only them losing their defensive signal caller, but their top guy up the middle that's going to shut that down. But the problem for the Buffalo Bills is their defense just got exhausted, especially chasing around Patrick Mahomes all night. Every single time they thought they had him, every single time you thought he was going to be stopped in the backfield, he's scrambling around, getting another first down, diving for the pylon early on. I mean, just like Allen, he was doing it all. This was, your move, my move kind of night for these two great quarterbacks. And the final, 2 minutes of this game was as great, as thrilling a football as you're going to watch. Now, if you're a fan of either one of these teams, it took 5 to 10 years off the back end of your life. But as someone who had no dog in the fight, and now listen, I'm a Jets fan, as you all can see. It was a tough spot for me because I don't want to see a division winner, a division opponent of the Jets win another Super Bowl after years of having to see the Patriots. Dude, I don't want to have to sit through another, potential reign of greatness by a division opponent. But at the same time, my heart is rooting for a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, the great Brian Fishman. And, He's a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. Occasionally, we talk trash with each other over the years when it comes to Jets Bills. He's had the advantage more so in recent years on that one. And I know how much this meant to him, with this great season, back-to-back great seasons the Bills had. As we say all the time in sports, you never know when you're going to get the next opportunity. The next opportunity at something like this isn't always guaranteed. So, as much as I want him to be happy, I'm also thinking, I don't want to see another division opponent either get to or win a Super Bowl. But, even as, a disgruntled Jets fan, I felt that loss for Bills fans last night because on two separate occasions in that final 2 minutes, you thought you had them. You thought you had this one, whether it be, Gabriel breaking wide open and getting the touchdown just after the 2-minute warning. Chiefs followed it up and break your heart 45 seconds later with the long touchdown run by Tyreek Hill that, some thought might have been called for a taunting penalty when he gave up the peace sign there. And for the Bills to race down and score with 13 seconds to go, you're seeing the exuberance on the Bills sideline. You're seeing the cheer and joy up in the box that 30 plus members of the Allen family were there rooting for their son, brother, family member to move on in the playoffs, thinking that he had, the Ric Flair used to say, to beat the man, you gotta, to be the man, you gotta beat the man. And you thought, oh my God, Allen's beat the man. He's now the man. There's going to start being real conversation of who's the face of this league going forward. And the Bills defense let them down in that final 13 seconds. In 13 seconds, Mahomes and company drive down the field for a game-tying field goal. And, the mistakes that the Bills made here were clear. You should, A, squib kicked it. B, I don't know what you're doing playing prevent defense on either of the next two plays. This wasn't like the Chiefs had to get out of bounds and go all the way down the field for a touchdown. They just needed to get into reasonable field goal position here. It's one thing you're guarding the first down marker with Tyreek Hill running across the field, but the fact that you don't have two guys on Travis Kelce there, or at least, on that play, you should have tried to commit a penalty there. It would have been a 5 yards, but at least that's taking more time off the clock and still keeping the Chiefs deep. And, especially the previous blunder, not squib kicking it, you kick it out of the back of the end zone, that doesn't take any time off the clock. At least squib kick it, you force an offensive lineman to have to recover and maybe take a quick knee. That takes at least 3 seconds off the clock. So instead of 2 plays and a field goal attempt, it's left to 2 plays and you take your chances with a Hail Mary at the buzzer. But, you knew as soon as this went to overtime that whoever won the coin toss, in all likelihood, was going to win this game. You knew that, if the Bills did not get this coin toss, they were going to have their hearts broken and stepped on by this man once again. And now he moves on to his 4th straight AFC championship game against another guy looking to be that new kid on the block. Another young quarterback looking to show that, hey, I can conquer Goliath here in Joe Burrow after, he overcame, a beating on Saturday night. He overcame what was just as physical a thrashing as you're going to see from a defensive unit. I mean, he's probably still having nightmares of Jeffrey Simmons in that backfield as we speak. You know, it seemed like every other play, every third play, he's getting sacked. He's getting, some hit of some kind. And for him just to stand in there and, continue to persevere showed a lot of guts, showed a lot of toughness. Now, it also does help when you look on the other side of the field and you have Ryan Tannehill turning the football over at a feverish pace. And two of the three interceptions that Tannehill committed were on tip passes. So I don't want to really excoriate him, kill him too much. But at the same time, that especially the first play of the game on the interception to Bates, getting picked off, was tipped straight up in the air. The second one to Mike Hilton was the one that was really the worst of the group. But you have a tie game. It's less than 30 seconds to go. At the very worst in that spot, you should be looking at overtime. And instead, he throws one right down the middle that gets tipped up at midfield. And Logan Wilson gives the Bengals great field position, knowing that all they got to do is go about 20 yards here, and it sets up Evan McPherson, who's been clutch for them all year long for a game-winning field goal. And between McPherson and Burrow, they have a new swagger there in Cincinnati. It's not the old, Marvin Lewis, Andy Dalton Bengals where you're waiting for the floor to cave in. No, this Bengals unit, they expect to win. Burrow said it 2 weeks ago. Get used to this. This is not your same old Cincinnati Bengals. And now we're looking forward to a rematch between these two teams, rematch of what was a great matchup in Week 17, this time taking place in Arrowhead this Sunday afternoon. All right, a lot left I want to get to today. Of course, going to get to the NFC side of things coming up and how it impacts the future of a couple of these teams. Mixing some NBA thoughts. The Giants have a new general manager. There's another new GM opening and a possible interesting head coach opening in the NFL. So a lot to get to over these next about 45 minutes or so. So please sit back, relax, put your feet up, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
You know, the media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere. On air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers.
It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting with locations up and down the East Coast from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools. Redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-RADIO.
All the excitement late last night, Chiefs-Bills kind of, put a shadow a little bit over what was a thrilling afternoon on the NFC side of things on when it came to Rams-Buccaneers, because if not for Chiefs-Bills, Rams-Buccaneers would be the headline, would be the leading story coming out of this weekend, because you felt like you were watching 3 or 4 games at one time with all the chaos that broke loose in that game. From early on, the questions coming in. Matthew Stafford, he beat the Buccaneers in the regular season, but could he do it when the lights shine the brightest in the postseason? Could he have a repeat performance of what he did last Monday against the Arizona Cardinals? And the answer turned out to be a resounding yes, because early on, he was having a field day, hitting Kupp and Odell Beckham left and right down the field, including that long 70-yard touchdown to Kupp that kind of broke things open early on. You're looking at that Buccaneers defense, and I believe it was Mike Edwards on the play that just leaves Kupp wide open along the sidelines. It's like, how do you not have a man glued to him at all times? This guy was the best receiver in the sport this last year. And you're not, when you leave him wide open like that, that's essentially your death wish. You're essentially saying, we really don't care about winning this game today. So, and the other thing that was surprising was the Bucs beating themselves with penalties early on. Sue, who at times in his career has been a walking penalty, gets called for a 15-yard taunting penalty after he hits Stafford, and then push them up closer for that touchdown by Blanton. And then a couple drives later, Brady gets called for an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty when he starts arguing with Ed Hockley's son, who is a spitting image of his father as a referee. Starts arguing with him, saying that Von Miller hit him under the chin. He gets tacked 15 yards there. That backs them up and probably helped cause Ryan Suckup to miss a field goal right there. And then Brady throws an interception to Nick Scott right along the Tampa sidelines right before halftime. That, quite frankly, they're lucky they went into the break at only 20-3 rather than 27-3 or 26-3 or even 23-3, because it was not looking good for Tampa Bay. But where they caught a break is the Rams' inability to handle prosperity. The Rams, I don't know whether it was being too comfortable with the lead or not being more secure with the football. And the first fumble by Cam Akers right before halftime was kind of a blessing for the Buccaneers, because you thought that, even if they drive it in on the next play, they'll at least get a field goal, and they've got the ball coming out of the break. But Tampa caught a break. He let go of the ball just barely before his helmet hit the ground. But then in the second half, it turned into a comedy of errors with Kupp's fumble that kind of got the Bucs going, set up the Fournette touchdown before the end of the third quarter. But then, you get a fumble by Brady on a strip sack by Von Miller. And on the very next play, I don't know whether it was a communication issue between Stafford and Allen, or Allen thought that Stafford called hike, Stafford just not paying attention. But, you have a 25-yard loss on it that JPP is able to recover. And even though it didn't turn into anything for the Rams, that's a missed opportunity to really put your foot on their throat and tell them that the game is over there. But where they really shot themselves in the foot was, it's one thing you get the Mike Evans touchdown with about 3 minutes to go, but the Bucs had to use up all their timeouts just to get the football back there and hope and pray for some defensive stops and a miracle. And they get that miracle. Cam Akers fumbles again on a hit by Sue, and you get the ball at the 30-yard line. You're thinking, as a Rams fan, here we go again. Hell, as a football fan, because we've seen this way too many times from Tom Brady. And he did it in the Super Bowl, for crying out loud. And once again brings his team back from the depths, and converts on a fourth. Him and Fournette convert on a fourth down to tie up the game with about 40 seconds to go. You're thinking, all right, we're going to overtime. Brady's going to throw a game-winning touchdown to Mike Evans or Gronkowski or something, and the Rams are going to be left thinking, what could have been? But obviously, something new has kicked in Matthew Stafford. Some kind of new mindset, determination, new guts that we've never seen from him before, or were never afforded the opportunity to see from him because of all those years in Detroit where they were always a walking disaster. Because he kind of just shook this all off and like, no, we're not settling for overtime. I'm going to win this game in regulation. And him and Kupp just tore that defense apart. 2 plays, and they're set up for a game-winning field goal. Now, it's one thing, you get the play along the left side, but up the middle, when you have Kupp lining up like that, whether he's lining up at the tight end position or lining up at the slot, you know that one of 2 things is going to happen here. He's either going to run a slant across the middle, or he's going to run streaks right down the field. Well, being where they were at on the field at the 44-yard line, still, a good 25, 30 yards out from a reasonable field position for Matt Gay to kick a field goal. You know that he's not running a slant across the middle, especially when they're without timeouts. So I don't know whether it was Todd Bowles calling a zero blitz or Antoine Winfield missing his assignment, but that was a busted coverage by the Tampa Bay defense that had played well enough to get them back in position to win this game, but at the biggest moment failed to keep the Rams in check. And it afforded them the opportunity to hit the walk-off field goal at the buzzer, leaving the Rams in euphoria, leaving the Buccaneers stunned that they couldn't repeat as Super Bowl champions, and leaving a lot of questions out there about Tom Brady's future. Something that 48 hours ago, none of us were thinking about. But in the last 2 days, you've been hearing a lot of noise coming from sources out of that building about how he's been, non-committal after this year, and how even after the game, when asked, quote, "I haven't put a lot of thought into it. So, we'll just take it day by day and kind of see where we're at." Listen, that is the first time you've ever heard comments like that about out of Tom Brady's mouth. Up until now, it's been, I want to play till I'm 45. Maybe I'll play till I'm 50. This is the first time we've heard Tom non-committal about his future. But hey, all credit to the Rams. Give Stafford, Kupp a lot of credit. Hell, give Odell Beckham a lot of credit. Me giving Beckham credit, but yeah, I got to give the guy credit because he's played well these first two games. They shied away from him a bit in that second half, but he hasn't been a problem so far. He hasn't been the distraction that I thought he would be, and I think a little bit of that, what's helped there, ironically, is the injury to Robert Woods, because without that injury, Odell is probably the third option on that team and might get a little bit crabby, but he's done well as the sidekick to Kupp, has known his role there, and has stayed relatively calm and relatively out of trouble. Now, with this win, the Rams get to play a home game next week in the NFC Championship game. Hell, they get to play at home potentially for the rest of the year, thanks to the Green Bay Packers falling to the San Francisco 49ers on Saturday night. And listen, this of the 4 games taking place this weekend, this was the one game where I looked at it and thought that the road team had no shot in hell. Because I figured, San Fran going from playing in relatively nice weather in the Dome in Dallas to now playing in 12-degree weather that felt like -1 at kickoff. Even with the Bosa being able to play, some members of their defense still a bit hobbled, I was concerned about how Jimmy Garoppolo was going to handle playing in this kind of weather. And he wasn't great. He wasn't god-awful either. I mean, there were a lot of passes that his receivers should have caught that were dropped early in this game. But the 49ers hung tough after that opening drive in which Rodgers and company drove down the field with relatively ease. Their defense and special teams won them this game. Without Valdez-Scantling there, of course you got Devontae Adams, his best friend on the team. And you have Aaron Jones, who's been their number one running back. But outside those two, Rodgers didn't really even look to get anybody else involved on Saturday. Maybe he got spooked by the fumble by Merciless in the first half, or Mercedes in the first half, but it was pretty much checkdowns to Jones or throws down the sidelines to Adams. Their offense after that first drive had no answers. You credit the 49ers defense, who had pressure on Rodgers throughout the night, kept the Packers offense from crossing the 50-yard line in 4 of their remaining 6 drives of that game. But what was also a big factor is the special teams of San Francisco. I mean, when's the last time you saw a team not just win a playoff game, but win any game strictly based off their special teams unit? They block Mason Crosby's field goal that would have put them up by 10 right before halftime. You get a couple of long kickoff returns, including the one by Samuel that set up their field goal early in the third quarter. Then you get a block punt in the fourth that allowed the Niners to tie up this game. And Robbie Gould remained perfect in his career in the postseason when kicking field goals. And it leaves, a packed crowd at Lambeau looking around stunned like, we only scored 10 points in a playoff game. We drive 54 yards on 10 plays in the first drive of the game. It could only muster about 200 yards throughout the remainder of this game. a lot of blame to go around. Special teams on the Packers, their failures. Rodgers, he deserves a fair amount of the blame here, and he took his fair share of the blame, heaped it on himself after this game. And the Packers blow what was a great opportunity for them as the 1 seed. They were going to continue to have warm weather-like teams come and play in the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. And with the fact that the NFC Championship game is at 6:30 next Sunday night, you can only imagine how cold it would have been at Lambeau for that game. And now you're left, just like the Buccaneers, who have a little bit of uncertainty in their future with, Tom potentially mulling retirement and some contract situations. There's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the Packers. Now, Davante Adams is set to be a free agent, and are the Packers going to use the franchise tag on him? They've got a lot of cap issues when it comes to guys due for new contracts. And Aaron Rodgers, since around this time last year, he's wanted out of there. He's wanted to leave. Now, things simmered down a little bit after meetings last summer with him and Brian Gutekunst. That they seemed to come to some kind of resolution. But, as he once said, his future is kind of a beautiful mystery. And you listen to his quotes after this game, he felt a lot like how Brett Favre felt. It sounded in the last couple of years he was with the Green Bay Packers, where he's talking about, quote, I'm going to take some time, have conversations with the folks around here and take some time away. Then goes on and says, this thing is definitely going to look different moving forward. There's a lot of decisions to come in the next couple months. So many guys' contracts are up or on the brink, or salary cap stuff. So a lot of decisions to be made, and I don't want to be part of a rebuild if I'm going to keep playing. It seemed to emphasize the thought of if I'm going to keep playing. Now, last year there was a lot of thought that, maybe does he retire and go host Jeopardy? Go, do some kind of TV work, because he clearly has other aspirations outside of the football world. No, it's funny when it comes to both Brady and Rodgers. I don't think either one of them are going to retire. But if you put a gun to my head and ask me who is more likely to, I kind of think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. He seems less committal about playing the last 2 years than has Tom Brady. You've never heard Aaron set an age or a number as far as how long he wants to play. And he's always been kind of a curious personality like that. Always, like I said, seemed to have interest beyond just the football realm, where when it comes, and that's not to say he doesn't love this. That's not to say that he's not 100% committed when he's playing, but it always seems like at least the last 2 years to me that he does have one foot out the door and is prepared for life after football, whereas Brady is hanging on for dear life and, wants to, keep the childhood dream going as long as he can. So in the end, I don't think either one of them are going to retire. I think what will happen is Brady will come back for one more year with the Bucs and retire after next year. But Rodgers, I would be very surprised if we see him put on a Green Bay Packers uniform again. I do think that this is the end of the ride from there, and that going forward, Jordan Love is going to be the Packers quarterback, and Rodgers is going to be the quarterback of the Denver Broncos. Or, maybe there could be one other option that comes open. And I'll get to that a little bit later on. But I'm going to take another break here, come back, turn my attention to the NBA, where there's been some injury issues going on in the last week and a star getting benched. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
You know, the media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere. On air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers.
It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting with locations up and down the East Coast from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to gocsb.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools, redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-RADIO.
It will never be normal saying this, but we are 2 days away from the 2-year anniversary of the passing of the late, great Kobe Bryant. And I can only imagine how his family's feeling. I said this last year at this time, say it again. It feels so surreal, still so, you try to process it and you still can't, based on how young he was and the fact that his daughter and 7 other people were involved in that crash. It's just, I still remember it was a Sunday afternoon. In fact, it was the day of the WWE's January pay-per-view, the Royal Rumble. I'm sitting around getting prepped, getting jacked up for the Royal Rumble that night. And all of a sudden, I scroll across on Twitter and I see the headline come across, and I'm thinking, okay, this is some joke. This is some crap rag like the new claim to be news outlet that's just looking for their 5 minutes of fame and trying to get one over on us because it wasn't April 1st yet. And then as I start scrolling along, I see TMZ reporting this. I see CNN reporting this, ESPN. I see athletes and across the sports world and stars across the world of entertainment posting comments in shock and heartbreak and disappointment. And I'm like, oh my God, no. And, listen, there's the off the court stuff. What happened in Colorado. Of course, that's forever part of the story when it comes to Kobe Bryant's life and career. That's something you just can't ignore. But we're talking about one of the greatest players in NBA history who was just barely off retirement. But he'd been retired only 3 or 4 years at this point. Still wasn't even eligible for the Hall of Fame yet. And you would have loved to have heard his speech. As great as Vanessa did in presenting him and the intro by Michael Jordan was, you would have loved to have heard what Kobe had to say, who he would have taken shots at. And unfortunately, we got deprived of that when he died way too soon. And hell, not just him dying way too soon. His daughter, barely a teenager, and her life being taken from her before she even got to enter high school. Now, one thing I do know is if Kobe were alive today, he would be sitting there outright disgusted in what he's watching from his Los Angeles Lakers right now. He would be sitting there, shaking his head, pissed off. We all remember when he was on Jimmy Kimmel, several years back. There was that year before he retired, where he was out the second half of the season with injuries, and a bunch of the clowns on that team, like Nick Young and Jordan Hill, and even Carlos Boozer, had this over-the-top celebration to some random midweek victory at home in a year where they missed the postseason. We saw him roll his eyes in disgust at that. But he would be getting annoyed at this Laker team that is built, majority of which with his peers. You got LeBron doing his thing, but you have no consistency whatsoever from this Lakers squad, because every time you think that they're going to get going, then they have an awful loss at home to a team like Indiana. And that's what's led to the major headline when it comes to the Lakers this week, and that was the benching of Russell Westbrook late in that game, who, listen, no one will ever question the heart, the drive, the tenacity of Russell Westbrook. But at times, his basketball IQ can be lacking. At times, he just goes through a brain freeze on defense. And even though I think he does try to play defense somewhat, he doesn't play very well. The fact that, listen, I like Karis LeVert, but a player of Westbrook's level, a guy that's going to the Hall of Fame, should not be getting pushed around by Karis LeVert, even if LeVert is a few inches taller than him. I mean, for LeVert to go off like that in the fourth quarter, with a franchise record, 22 of his 30 points scored in the fourth, is inexcusable. That's why, Frank Vogel, who, even though we've been questioning his job security in recent weeks, it can't be as bad as you think. The fact that the front office is giving him the green light to handle the Westbrook situation the way he sees fit, and didn't have a problem with him benching him in the final 4 minutes against the Pacers last week, because the Lakers this year in fourth quarters have been outscored by 34 points in the 342 fourth quarter minutes that Westbrook has been on the floor. In the 198 minutes of fourth quarters that they've played without him, they've outscored their opponents by 50. And this is a team that has, looked old at certain parts, has no real youth outside of THT, has been without Anthony Davis since before Christmas. You got LeBron carrying more of a workload than he should in his, 19th season at age 36. I mean, occasionally you get a glimpse of the old Carmelo Anthony, but you can't expect that on a night in, night out basis from him anymore. I mean, the Lakers, at what point are we going to stop acting shocked about this? And we're just going to look at them and say, they ain't that good of a team. They really are not. And, as I said, outside of Davis, they don't have any major injuries on this team. No, it's been pretty much the team that Rob Pelinka and, to in large part, LeBron constructed this past off season, which was poorly constructed at the time. We all knew that. Looked like a team full of all-stars from 2014 rather than realizing what they are in 2022. Old, uninspired, and lack the athleticism of some of their Western Conference foes. Now, in the Eastern Conference, there is a team that is dealing with some major injury issues right now, and that was what has been one of the better stories of the first half of this season, the Chicago Bulls, who, up until a couple of days ago, for the first time in a decade, had the best record in the Eastern Conference after 40 games in the season. But the last 5 games, they're 1-4. They've lost 7 of their last 9 games, and injuries are starting to take a toll. The last 5, they've been without Zach LaVine due to a left knee injury. Now, it does sound like he could return tonight, but even that's still questionable. But now they're going to be without Lonzo Ball for the next 6 to 8 weeks due to a surgery to repair his left meniscus. Surgery taking place sometime this week. And he was having a career high in not just scoring, but also shooting. I mean, you look at him, his shooting has gotten better each and every single season. As well as, they're missing a guy that is not exactly a scorer, will never be confused for that, but is one of those grit, gut, and hustle guys that every team needs in Alex Caruso. I mean, fans mock Alex Caruso's stat line and will bring up how, he doesn't do anything significantly well on the offensive end, but on the defensive end, he's a gutty, gritty kind of guy, dives for the loose balls, will play tenacious defense for you. And now you're going to be without him for 6 to 8 weeks after he fractured his right wrist on Friday night in the loss to Milwaukee, which, what a surprise. I was wondering when this moment was going to come. You knew it was going to happen because he can't help himself. But we had our first Grayson Allen moment in the NBA. For the first couple of years here, outside of a little tripping incident against Trae Young 2 years ago, we hadn't heard much from Grayson Allen since he left Duke. There hadn't been much of the Grayson Allen is a cheap shot nonsense going on. Well, Friday night, Caruso is coming to the rim on a layup, and I don't know what the hell Grayson Allen was doing. I don't know how anyone could defend what he was doing, but he grabs his arm out of midair. There's clearly a pull down motion. You see him swing around with his right hand, which, come on, the ball wasn't anywhere near that hand, so there was no intent to try and block something coming off the rim or get a rebound. That was a clear, dirty play. I don't know, for all of these clowns on social media that keep trying to defend him, saying, he was going for the ball. Please, what the hell are you watching? And a guy like this does not deserve benefit of the doubt. It's one thing when there's injuries in the NFL because that's a contact sport. And I'm all for playing tenacious defense. I was one of those Net fans that didn't have a problem with the way PJ Tucker was defending Kevin Durant in the playoffs last year. I thought it was good, clean playoff like defense. Didn't sense anything dirty with that. I like the way you still get that kind of defense at times from guys like Marcus Smart and few other players throughout the league. But, what Grayson Allen did, this isn't football. That was essentially trying to tackle a guy the way he's pulling him down in midair. And I've always believed in a situation like that, if you do something like that, you injure the other guy that causes him to miss time, your suspension should last as long as it takes him to recover. And if the NBA, that you think this is just an isolated incident, please, guys like this never grow up, never learn. I mean, look at the NHL. Tom Wilson has been doing this kind of crap for years, and the punishments still don't fit the crime. I mean, if the NBA doesn't start coming down harder on Allen and guys like this, you're going to see someone suffer a career-ending injury at some point. And now, these injuries are starting to be a toll on the Bulls. They're without Levine till hopefully only this week. They're without Ball, out Caruso, lost 7 of 9 games, and now they've fallen to third, only percentage points ahead of the Bucks, a game ahead of the most surprising team in the league to me, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who better have a representative in the All-Star game this year. Hopefully that kid Garland makes as a reserve. And a game and a half ahead of the 76ers, who all Embiid's been doing since the start of this calendar year is putting up 30-point game after 30-point game, including having a 40-point double-double the other night. And, they sit there, they've fallen behind my Brooklyn Nets. They're half a game behind them who, Nets, can you play a little bit of defense? You should not be going to Minnesota and giving up 136 points for crying out loud. But no, between defense there, depth issues on the bench, especially when you're playing at home without Kyrie, and then injuries with Nicholas Claxton and what is possibly a setback for Joe Harris. No, the Nets have me a little bit concerned as well right now. So it's kind of wide open there in the East. I mean, you have the Miami Heat sitting at top of that division, that conference. And remember, they were one of the first teams to go through not just COVID issues, but they've been dealing with injury issues of their own and have just keep on marching through and now sit there atop the Eastern Conference. Gonna take one last break, come back on the other side, finish things up with some thoughts on the new Giants GM hire. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
The media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere. On air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers.
It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting with locations up and down the East Coast from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools, redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-RADIO.
All right, only a few more minutes left here, but let's finish up the podcast for this week. What came as a very surprising move to some at this time a week ago was the Raiders firing general manager Mike Mayock after 3 seasons in which they went 25-2 2024 with him at the helm there. But when you really start digging in on this, it shouldn't come as much as a surprise. Earlier that day, there was already reports coming out about them requesting interviews with Dave Ziegler, the director of player personnel for the Patriots, and the Colts assistant GM Ed Dotz. And the fact that even though he was the general manager, he was kind of the right-hand man to John Gruden. The way that it's been explained is the dynamic was it was Gruden 51% and Mayock 49%. So he was kind of answering to Gruden more so than Gruden was answering to him. And with that being the case, you figured he was going to be the fall guy there. And then when you look, it's one thing how the Antonio Brown situation played out, and they traded draft picks for him before and cut him before he even played a game for them. But you look at how he handled the draft the last several years, and on paper, it's not much to write home about. You look at in 3 seasons, they drafted 23 players. And while 16 of them are still on their roster, 4 of their top 5 picks from the 2020 draft are gone already within a season and a half. You had Henry Ruggs, of course, we know what happened there with the car crash and his arrest and the fact that he's never going to play in the league again. But then David Arnett, they release a week later after video surface of him with guns and making death threats. Then they had traded Lynn Bowden to the Miami Dolphins. They cut linebacker Tanner Muse before this season, and he never even played for them. Remember, he spent his entire rookie year on the IR. And this is coming after Mayock boasted about how it was a steal for them to have 3 third-round picks in the 2020 draft and claimed that they were going to have 3 more starters. Well, 2 of those 3 picks are no longer on your team. And should I remind you all of the disaster that the first round in 2019 turned into when they had 3 first-round picks? They draft Cleveland Farrell, number 4 overall, and all he's turned out to be is a special teams specialist for them. Turned out to be nowhere near the pass rusher they thought they were getting. They draft Josh Jacobs with 24th overall, and he had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, but kind of a setback this year. And then there's safety Jonathan Abrams, who's okay against the run, but can't defend the pass down the field. Oh, and then there's last year where at 17th overall, they drafted Alex Leatherwood, who most had pinned as a second-round draft pick. And by week 5, they demoted him from right tackle to right guard. Yeah. Really an impressive draft resume by you, Mike Mayock. And think about it. For years, this was the lead draft analyst, lead draft expert on the NFL Network. He was for the NFL Network what, say, Mel Kiper is for ESPN, where he seemed to know everything that there is to know about all of these players coming out of the draft. And with this poor resume, how do you expect him to get another job on TV? Everyone seems to think it's a fait accompli that he's just going to waltz back into another television gig. I wouldn't be surprised if he does get another gig, but they decide not to put him on their draft coverage because clearly he's not as good at this as we all thought. And with that opening now, it brings up what's going to happen with the head coach spot, because now that they have asked to interview Gerard Mayo, the linebackers coach from the Patriots. But me personally, I'm hoping that Rich Bisaccia gets a real shot at that head coaching job. And a lot of the players there are as well. Now, more times than not, when a group of players want something, you should probably go the other way, because sometimes the player's coach isn't what's best for the organization in the long run. But when it comes to the GM opening there, I do hope that ESPN's Louis Riddick gets a long look at that spot. He likes Rich Bisaccia and is someone that thinks he should get that job on a permanent basis. And B, he's been campaigning for a GM role for years with his work on ESPN. Well, he hasn't out and out said he wants a GM role. Just go look at his tape. Look at any of the times he's been on TV or his work when it comes to Monday Night Football. The guy knows his football. He knows what he's doing. He comes from a background. He played in the sport and was a front office executive for years. Now, he's been interviewed quite a few times by other teams, so clearly he must know something if these teams are so willing to bring him in for interviews when they have a front office role open to them. Now, one team did fill their front office position this past week, and it was the New York Giants. They hired Joe Shane as their new general manager, becoming only the fifth Giants general manager in the last 40 years. They've had reasonable amount of consistency when it comes to the general manager role, especially with how long Ernie Accorsi was there. And this he's got a lot of work to do here, because they were tied for the worst record in the league for the last half a decade. Made a lot of boneheaded draft picks at times, including taking Saquon Barkley, number 2 overall, in a draft where they could have taken their next quarterback or could have traded down and gotten a boatload of picks. But the first chore of duty for this guy is selecting his new head coach. And you like some of the names that they're already considering interviewing. They met with Brian Daboll on Friday, which was easy. All he had to do was probably just walk down the hallway, considering he before Friday he was still the assistant general manager of the Bills. He met with Leslie Frazier on Saturday. They've got a meeting set up with Brian Flores, and that they've asked to meet with Dan Quinn from the Cowboys. Now, that remains to be seen if the Cowboys will allow anyone to meet with Dan Quinn, considering I still think there's a slight chance Mike McCarthy gets fired, and maybe either him or the golden child out there, Kellen Moore, take over as the head coach. Jerry may get cold feet and not want to lose one of these two guys, and that could lead to McCarthy's undoing. But I do like, when it comes to the Giants here, that they didn't go the safe route, didn't stick within the family as been referred to in the past. Went outside the organization, made a thorough look for their new general manager, and they bring in this guy, Joe Sheehan, who comes from what is one of the better organizations in the sport right now. The Bills have built themselves up from being mediocre to now being consistently in the conversation as that team that could come out of the AFC to be in the Super Bowl. And that on the NFC side of things is a position that the Giants want to get back to. Now, there's one interesting name that keeps getting brought up as the possible next head coach of the Giants. And for them to pull that off, they would probably have to make a trade. And that's Sean Payton. And there's been rumors that have began to surface over the last couple of days about Sean Payton's future. Because since the Saints season has ended, Sean Payton has been MIA. The organization, no one in the organization has really heard from him. And there's even been some thoughts that maybe he steps down as the head coach of the Saints and maybe goes into a semi-retirement for a year, goes into broadcasting. Fox is already eyeing him as a potential replacement if Troy Aikman leaves and goes to join Amazon for their Thursday Night Football package starting next year. All of this is coming out so fast, about Sean Payton. We've been seeing rumors, speculation for weeks that by a lot of Giant writers, Giant fans, wondering what would it take to trade for Sean Payton. And that's the only way I think that you're getting Sean Payton. Because I don't think the Saints are just going to let him step out of his 3-year contract that he has remaining and go join some other team. As much as they may like Dennis Allen and think that he could be a suitable replacement as Sean Payton, I don't think they're just going to let him walk away from there. And when it comes to Sean Payton, maybe he's just burnt out because he's been the Saints head coach for a long time. He's had a lot of success there in 15 years. Went to the playoffs 9 times, won the division 7 times. They won the Super Bowl in 2009. Him and Drew Brees conquering Peyton Manning. And now, maybe in his first year without Brees, maybe he's just worn out and needs a break from it all. Now, who knows? I talked about earlier Aaron Rodgers, his options. Maybe New Orleans could be an interesting option for him as his next destination if Sean Payton decides to hang around. Maybe that could breathe new life into him. But there's a lot of uncertainty in New Orleans as well. Michael Thomas, it seems like every day is willing to get in a fight with that organization and has moved on from them for a long time, especially with the way he handled his ankle surgery last offseason. So, and then with the fact that the Saints really need to find their long-term answer at quarterback. That's why, all these teams that do have their answer, Chiefs, Bills, Chargers, Bengals, anybody that has a young quarterback that has shown that they are beyond competent, that they are truly the guy, grab onto them, hug them for dear life, because it's not easy to find these guys. And we're going to be seeing some of these guys coming up this Sunday. This Sunday with these conference title games, you got some interesting storylines. Bengals Chiefs rematch of Week 17, this time taking place in Arrowhead. And it's the same thing here with the Bengals that the Bills were facing last week, where they have goals, they have grander sights set for themselves beyond just making the AFC title game. But there's that demon, that dragging, that cloud that hangs upon the AFC that only one man has been able to stop in the last 4 years, and that man is Tom Brady, and he's no longer in the postseason. Patrick Mahomes, he has yet, outside of last year's Super Bowl, he has yet to have a truly bad postseason. I mean, you look at him, or be the reason why the Chiefs lose a postseason game. You look at it now in the postseason when it comes to touchdown to interceptions, he is 23-1 when it comes to passing touchdowns to interceptions at home. I mean, he's put up some remarkable numbers in what is still a very young career. He's not even 27 years old yet. And, he's done what Joe Burrow is now striving to do. And then the nightcap, you get the third meeting of the year between the 49ers and the Rams. And so far in this rivalry, Kyle Shanahan has had the advantage over his friend and former colleague in Sean McVay. He's been the one guy that's been able to crack the code of LA's whiz kid. So, you look at these, you have one young stud quarterback who's turned around the entire fortunes of a franchise in Burrow. You have the Chiefs continuing their march on what they hope is the second leg of a dynasty, or at least what they say will be a dynasty. You have the Rams, who have a chance to play from here on out in their home stadium, be the second year in a row to host a Super Bowl with a quarterback who is finally looking for his time to shine, his moment in the sun. He's conquered and outlasted the greatest of all time. Now he's got 2 more wins to go before he can finally have his day, his spotlight, and show that it was truly the Lions all those years that were holding him back, not the other way around. At a 49ers team that 2 years ago was half a quarter away from winning a Super Bowl, that has unfinished business with a quarterback that their organization keeps trying to replace, but all they seem to do, no matter how average he is when he's out there, all they seem to do is win when Jimmy Garoppolo plays. So, I don't know how you're going to be able to top this past weekend's action, how you're going to be able to give us anything better than what we just sat back and witnessed for 12 hours over this last Saturday night and Sunday afternoon into Saturday. But, the Bengals, Chiefs, 49ers, and Rams are sure going to try, and it's going to create for a very interesting championship Sunday. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 from Monday, January 24th, 2022. Everyone, please have a great night, have a great week, and I'll talk to you all again, same time next week. Until then, stay safe, everyone. Peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you!
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, and I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.